Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei got harem with Murayama and Irina? Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. As Issei was walking back to the school hoping that the orc wasn't waiting for too long. He made a call to a certain someone who may be able to clear up his worries. He met a fair amount of people during his time as a nomad, but it was thanks to some people that treated him like family that made being a nomad enjoyable. It was also these people that he had a deep respect for, that many think that he would never say anything that represents any form of disrespect. The many clearly did not know who Issei is. Come on Azazel, I swear if you're drunk again, and you have a hangover I'm calling Penemu and asking if she could play that shitty noise she calls music. Issei said slowly becoming annoyed by the waiting, but when he finally got through he was met with a panicked voice. Hello? Issei, is that you? This voice did not belong to Azazel, it was far too feminine, unless he hit himself with that weird ray gun again. That was a weird time for Issei and Vali. Penemu? What's wrong? Where's Azazel? He's trying to track Middlet and Calawerner. They somehow disappeared and we have no idea where to they may have gone. This brought a wave of panic to Issei, since Middlet is just a little girl who could barely take care of herself, heck she was just a scaredy cat that only knew how to use her light spears to cut bread to make toast. Even then, they had to make sure that someone was making sure to keep watch, lest they end with a flaming Issei again. That was not a good time for him, even with the flame resistance. But back to the main point. Wait. Is Kali with her at least? I mean you know how Middlet is whenever she isn't with either one of us. Issei said trying his best to stay calm, although on the inside this completely reeks of Rainer, and he really wanted to hunt her down immediately. If there's anyone that may try something like that it would be Rainer. She is the type of person to do some shit like this. I don't know. Last I heard from Kali, she was going on a scouting mission in Kuo. We were originally going to call you and see if you could provide a place for her to stay. This rang a lot of warning bells for Issei because he didn't hear from Kali, instead he saw. Wait, so it was Kali that's supposed to come and not Rainer? Rainer, you know where she is, Issei. Rainer was supposed to be arrested after her last mission almost caused a whole new war to break out. Wait, what did she do? She was originally sent to Russia to scout a sacred gear user, but it turns out he was already reincarnated as a devil. Instead of reporting back like she was supposed to, Issei connected the dots immediately. She attacked the group the user was a part of and killed him, didn't she? And not only that, the devil actually cared for him, huh? Yes, because at the time tensions were high enough as is, with Rainer doing what she did, another war was going to start if it wasn't for Azazel and Shemezai. Penemu, I think I know what happened to Kali, and I am pretty sure it involves Rainer. Don't tell me you saw her, please tell me that she isn't in Kuo. If she's a Kuo then that may spark a war because that's where the sisters of two of the mass are at. Issei was scared but quickly calmed himself. I'm sorry to say, but she is here and I think I know what happened to Kali. Penemu was beginning to fear for the future because Rainer was as arrogant as a fallen could get, and if she did anything that provoked the heiresses of the territory, then one could only hope that it doesn't lead to war. Issei, I know you aren't a part of the Grigori anymore, but please. Please, Issei, save them. They are like the daughters I never had. Don't worry Penemu, the second I find her location, you won't have to worry about Rainer again. I know Issei, but please be careful. I don't want to imagine what Kakabiel would do if something happened to you. Ha. Don't worry, I'm pretty sure he'll find a way to reincarnate me and kill me again for making his training look bad. Issei couldn't help but laugh. Also I'm about to head to meet with another devil. By the sound of it I am going to meet the Grimoire heiress, so any advice? First off, her name is Rias. I knew that already. Issei tried to play off, but Penemu knew better. Did you really? Are you sure you weren't going to call her red and busty? Issei paled when he heard that because that was actually the only thing he knew about the devil. Also, as far as I know, I'm sure that she also reincarnated Barakiel's daughter. Why would Barry's daughter be a devil? Let's just say that it's not something you should mention. I would recommend that you be cautious of everyone there, since it looks like they all have a trauma of their past. Understood, by the way. Yes, don't worry, you'll be compensated for helping. No, not that. I just wanted to ask if you could check something about my family. This brought a look of concern from Penemu, since she knew Issei's family was sort of a sore subject, considering that he did witness them dying in a fire. Yes, I could, but I need to ask, why? It's just that Rainer told me about a message from Kakabiel, and he said that I should take a look at my family tree. Whatever that means. Penemu was surprised at first because a couple weeks ago, Kakabiel asked her to look at Issei's family and see if there is anything about them that could have explained Issei's talent with support and defensive magic. Penemu at first was curious, but just written it off as Kakabiel being a nut again. But now that Issei asked, well, who is she to deny someone's curiosity? By the way, did Kakabiel knew about Rainer almost starting a war? Penemu couldn't help but let out a laugh. Hum on Issei. You know damn well that if he knew. Rainer wouldn't be a problem now, would she? Issei had to agree with her on that. Kakabiel is many things, heck, a warnut was once one of those things, but one thing remains true about him. He is not the biggest fan of war, not anymore. While everyone had their reasons, Kakabiel never mentioned why he was against another war, but when Issei asked Azazel, he said that something happened and that he simply couldn't stand war anymore. Alright, I'll be sure to let you know if anything happens, take care. Issei said as he hung up now in front of the orc building. Well, at least I didn't run into the door this time, but before Issei could knock the door open once again to reveal the white-haired girl, also known as Kaneko. Issei said before he accidentally fell forward, but thankfully Kaneko stopped his fall, one thing that he is also thankful about, since he was pretty sure a hit from her would kill him. Dragon or not, he saw the strength that the petite girl has, and it is not worth the pain. Thanks for the save, also I brought you some food from the diner. This brought some confusion from Kaneko, since she is used to the food that Issei makes himself. And don't worry, one of my mentors made it, and trust me when I say it. I think you're going to like it. Issei said as he righted himself and then handed the lunchbox to Kaneko. Thanks, and Prez has been expecting you. Kaneko said as she began to walk towards the room, Issei following behind her. The two began to make small talk from what they were doing, and Kaneko asked what's in the lunchbox, but Issei just said that it's a surprise, much to her displeasure. Although she is looking forward to it since she never tried the food from Issei's mentors, and from what she heard after talking to Issei. She may end up loving this food. Also, if you don't mind me asking, is there anything I have to worry about in the meeting? Kaneko pondered for a second, but ultimately shook her head. Only Saji being jealous and Prez coming out of the shower. This brought a look of confusion to Issei's face. Why would they need a shower in a clubroom? To be honest, I don't think I want to know why, but I might as well as ask. Why does she have a shower in a clubroom? Kaneko at first was confused, but then thought about it as well. I never asked, I just thought that oh we're here. Kaneko said. Issei knew that it was a little convenient for the door to appear, but at least they're here and he gets to witness Kaneko's face when she finally tries Robin's food. Well, here we go, also if you don't mind me asking. Kaneko immediately knew what he was going to ask. The red-haired one is Rias. The black-haired one is Akeno, the blonde with blue eyes is Kiba, and the one that will more than likely be glaring at you is Saji. Why would Saji glare at me? He thinks that you only came because of Prez's and Akeno's beauty. Meh, I don't really care, it's not like I'm here to join a peerage or something. Issei said as he knocked on the door. To be honest, I think I only came to just say that I want to be friends. I mean, I'm pretty sure that I succeeded with the student council. Would getting blown out of the building by a torrent of water actually count as being friends? Kaneko said with a deadpan stare. Oh, so you saw it, huh? Issei asked as Kaneko nodded. Well, at least she didn't try to kill me. Issei declared as the door opened, revealing the blonde-haired prince of Kuo. What he wasn't prepared for was a deadpan look on Kaneko's face and Issei looking like he had a great day. Nevertheless, he retained his composure and greeted Issei. Hello, we were expecting you. This got Issei's attention quickly as he turned towards Kiba and extended a hand. Kiba saw this and took his hand, giving Issei a firm handshake. If it weren't for the fact that you came to pick me up earlier, I would have been a little creeped out. Issei said with a smile. So you're the prince of Kuo, huh? Must be a pain having girls squeal just from seeing you, huh? This brought a laugh from Kiba as this was one of the few things that he didn't like about school, but he eventually got used to it. You get used to it eventually. I'm actually curious about why you don't get swarmed by fangirls, considering that you are the maestro of Kuo. This brought out a laugh from Issei as he didn't expect Kiba to be curious about something so trivial. You just gotta be approachable. Issei said, although Kiba tilted his head at this. What do you mean? Kiba tries his best to be a gentleman for everyone, not only that he does, he excels at many activities in school. Well, think about it. Everyone here is pretty much a common person, someone that doesn't really belong with royalty and all that. And when people think of royalty, they just think of them. Being Kiba began to follow along with Issei as the trio began to make their way to the couches. Perfect examples of everything. This brought a smile to Issei because this means that it's possible for Kiba to more approachable, which in turn make the fangirls stop squealing. In all honesty, he would much rather not deal with the squeals from the fangirls. Especially since one of those fangirls happened to be Sakura. And because of that, perfection people will be afraid to approach, thus making friends extremely hard. Kiba finished for him. Exactly, that's why you just gotta ease up on being Mr. Perfect. Just try to be whatever your name was. I completely forgot. This brought out a laugh from Kiba, since from what he has heard about Issei is true. He is as easygoing as they come and gives off a kind aura. Kiba Yudo, but please call me Yudo. Is it okay if I call you Issei? Yudo said as he extended his hand to Issei. Nah, just call me Ice. It's a lot easier and all my friends do. By the way, where is your president? At this point Saji just came up and tried to look all tough, but Issei was a nomad and during that time he has seen many things that. So I take it that you think I'm trying to take your seniors, huh? This brought a wave of surprise from Saji, but before he could back up he was caught by Issei. Hatchling, you have a lot to learn if you keep thinking with your beep like that. Wait, what do you mean? Saji said, but Issei was quick to answer, an arm around his shoulders. Tell me, whatever your name was, why did you become a devil? This brought everyone, except Kaneko, who is currently wearing a joy-induced look on her face after trying the food from the diner and clearly liking it, to tense up with Yudo readying to summon a blade and Saji materializing his sacred gear, but before they could do anything else. Issei spoke up. I don't see why you guys are getting so antsy. I'm pretty sure you saw me get shot out of the student council office. Issei was only met with blank stares from both Saji and Yudo. At that point Akeno came and set some tea done for everyone. Don't mind them, Ice, is it okay if I call you Ice? Issei nodded his head. Only if I call you Aki. Issei said with a smile. This also brought a smile from Akeno, since almost everyone she meets usually calls her with some honorific. It's not that she minds, but she wouldn't mind someone calling her by a nice little nickname. So of course she nodded her head at this. Well, I don't mind, especially if it's from one of my juniors. Akeno with a sultry look trying to get an embarrassed look from Issei, but to her chagrin, Issei gave a warm chuckle. Hey, I know you're trying to embarrass me, but trust me when I say it, I've had a fair share of experience with a good friend of mine doing that. Issei said as he took a drink from his tea. I'm not gonna lie, this is some pretty good tea. Issei said, quickly moving on to another subject. At this point the sound of a shower stopping was heard and Akeno moved to where the sound came from along with a bundle of clothes. President, our guest has arrived. At this point Issei wasn't listening since he was looking at how Kaneko had a sad look from finishing the food that Robin made for her. She looked at him with a blank look, but Issei got the message, so he reached out and patted her on the head. Don't worry, you can come with me to the diner to get more food. I'm sure Robin would be more than happy to give you some more. Issei said while Kaneko gained a hopeful look in her eyes. He is not gonna lie, she did look really cute with that look, but he knew better than to comment on it. But at this point the woman of the time finally arrived and sat at the desk that was in the room. This woman is the very same woman who somehow has the whole school eating from the palm of her hand, but to Issei all he could think of was. Is that natural? How the heck does she have hair that red? Then again, I asked the same thing about white hair, purple hair, I think I met someone with green. Issei thought, clearly not paying attention to the redhead trying to gain his attention, but thankfully Kaneko was there and gave a small jab to Issei. Which did the job, but also had Issei in a lot of pain. Ow, what happened? Issei asked, but he was met with an annoyed stare from the devil whom he was supposed to meet. Ah crap, was I ignoring red and busty again? Issei thought he thought the thought but was met with a red-faced redhead, an angry Saji, a deadpan stare from Yudo, Aki giggling and Kaneko face palming. Something that at first flew over his head, but then it clicked. Fuck, I forgot her name again, didn't I? Before chaos could break out, Rias coughed into her fist to gain everyone's attention. Yes, well, ignoring the hiccup in our introductions, I think it would be best if we start again. I am Rias Gremory and welcome to the Occult Research Club, or the ORC for short. And from what happened earlier, I take it that you know about the supernatural. Issei nodded, although he did have a question though. How did you know? Issei probably thought that she saw the torrent of water from the student council office, but what she said just made the whole day better, especially with the embarrassed look from Rias and the stifled giggles from both Kaneko and Akeno. Did you see from here? Actually, why were you taking a shower? This brought a giggle from the whole club except Rias. Well, to answer your question, I guess could describe it as wrong place wrong time. Rias began to describe the events of what happened before the explosion of water from the student council office. Okay, I gave them the flyers and told them to call either of us if something happened. So they should be safe for the time being. Rias said to herself as she entered the school grounds. When she looked up to the student council room, she only had a small pout on her face. I know I deserve it for taking Saji from her, but surely she understands why, right? But before she knew it, the student council room exploded and a huge torrent of water came down to her location, completely soaking her to the bone. Not only that it knocked her down and got her a little muddy and by a little oh my, now this. But when she looked up she saw the person that was going to meet her cleaning himself up and conversing with what looked to be his sacred gear, but before she could approach him, he suddenly sped off, consequently throwing more mud at her. Seriously, Rias just gave up and went back to the orc so that she can at least make herself look presentable. Now back to the scene of Issei laughing. Really, Issei couldn't stop his laughing as he was now on the ground holding his sides. Oh crap. That is actually. But thankfully he stopped when he saw Ria's face and knew that he could laugh about it later. Alright. Sorry about that, but wow, you must have pissed off a black cat or witch or something if you had that kind of bad luck. Issei was still giggling to himself as he imagined one of the great sisters of Kuo covered in mud and frustrated. But he quickly brought himself back to reality. But who did you give the flyers to? And why? Issei asked, hoping that he wouldn't have to harm anyone. I gave them to Kaori, Murayama and Sakura Caddis when they passed by the bridge, but before she could continue, Issei immediately went into an offensive stance and summoned a weapon that looked like a large wrench and had it close to her person. Before the other club members could come to her rescue, they were knocked back by the killer intent that came from Issei. This was something that they didn't expect from someone who had a reputation of being an easygoing smartass. Instead of an easygoing student that looked like he would listen before attacking, they are now met with a warrior who may kill them if they end up saying the wrong thing. Why? Issei asked. Why what? Rias said, trying to retain her calm, but clearly failing. Why did you give them flyers and don't tell me that they are invitations to the orc? I know that you lot utilized the flyers to make contracts, now answer the question. Issei was losing patience quickly because the longer he was here the higher the chance of his friends getting hurt. And he'll be damned if he loses another one. It's because of the fallen angels that are at the abandoned church. I told them that if they see any suspicious people to call us through the flyers. I was originally going to try to get rid of them earlier, but they somehow have a letter from the leader of Fallen and I couldn't do anything about it. Rias said, and thankfully it was enough to pacify Issei. So you're not trying to force them into anything? Issei asked. No, I would prefer it if I could simply get rid of the Fallen from my territory, but with that letter that said the Fallen known as Kalwarner has permission to be here. I have my hands tied. This brought a look of confusion from Issei. What did the Fallen look like? Rias began to have a look of confusion on her face, but answer anyways. She was wearing a skimpy dominatrix outfit, not only that she had black hair. This brought a look of rage from Issei. Rainer. I swear if she did anything to Kali, Kaori or Sakura. I am going to, but before he could say anything else a magic circle appeared next to her and from the sounds of it, it's bad. What? We have to go. Rias said as everyone readied themselves for a fight. Issei, that was Sona, she is currently at Kaori's location. Issei didn't need her to say anything else. Issei knew that tonight, Rainer is going to die. He promised this. Let's go, I'll hitch a ride. Rias nodded as the peerage and Issei quickly teleported to a scene that Issei never wanted to see. It was Middle trying her hardest to stop the bleeding from a wound in Sakura's stomach with help from the bishops from Sona's peerage, and Kaori was barely holding on to dear life as Sona was trying to stabilize her. No, Kaori. Sakura. Issei rushed to the two as Middle saw her brother figure running towards them. Middle, what happened? But what he was met with was Middle tearing up and launched herself at him. Big brother. I'm sorry. Issei quickly soothed her and put her to his side. But he quickly rushed to Sakura and began to use an ability that brought a look of surprise from everyone, including a certain white-haired girl. But much to his dread it wasn't enough. Fuck. It's not working. Sakura, hang on. But he was met with a cough. Ice. Sakura said weakly. A look of sadness was met with Issei's look of desperation. I guess I got penetrated. Issei should have seen that coming. Even in the face of death she still cracks a joke. He didn't have time to think of that now because she coughed up some more blood. Sorry, I guess this is goodbye, huh? Addis wouldn't admit it, but she is thankful that Issei came into her life. She was also thankful for the memories she made with him and Kaori. Go to her. Issei felt her getting weaker and was beginning to grow even more desperate, but a voice brought him out of his thoughts. I said was Kaori's and it sounded even worse. Issei then looked at Rias in desperation. Rias went over to Caddis and began to use some magic, but was met with the same result. Issei couldn't think and went over to Kaori and simply held her, moving Sona's hands in the process. Ice, is that you? Even with the blood getting on him he didn't want to lose her or Sakura. It's me, Kaori, I'm here. He felt her smile into his shoulder. Thank goodness. Hey Ice, is it okay if I told you something? She felt Issei nod his head. I know I'm going to die, so I wanted to say this. I'm sorry. Why are you saying sorry? I should be the one saying sorry that I couldn't save you. She felt him shake a little. She knew that he was beginning to cry. It's not that, it's because I wanted to tell you that I fell in love with you. Issei felt his heart drop even further. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to ruin our friendship, and I knew that you cared for your old friend, so I knew I had no chance, but for this moment could you just hold me? Tears were beginning to fall from Kaori's eyes as she knew that she wouldn't be able to do anything else. She began to apologize to everybody that she knew. From her family to Korin and Robin, along with the little one. She also apologized to Sakura for also killing her, even if it was indirectly. Kaori, I'm not gonna let you die. So please don't speak as if this is it. Issei was beginning to lose hope. He didn't know what to do, well, more like he was too scared of losing Kaori and Sakura that he isn't even thinking. That does sound a lot like you, no wonder Sakura thought that you could be a harem king. Kaori tried to joke, but she knew her time was coming. At least I got to tell you that I love you, thank you. She saw her life flash before her eyes. From the first meeting with Sakura, the time they became the kendo captains. Beating the perverted duo up for peeping. From the sandstorm that saved her from Ken and his cronies, and her first meeting with Ice. But the best memories came with Ice. From the first meeting, to the time they hung out with Sakura with what's his face. Even though that ship sank. To the three meeting at her house and her dad trying to kill him for trying to corrupt his pure daughter. Ice didn't help the situation when he picked her up in a bridal carry and said something that really brought a bright red blush that day. Then I just need to make her into my blushing bride. Issei clearly jokes, Kaori knew that and was a little mad, but nevertheless felt really happy even if it was a joke. Sakura even told her about the whole harem thing, and Kaori remembered the conversation that day. That day. The two friends were leaving the diner since Issei decided to stay to help with closing. It was also at the time that the two had a conversation about their resident dragon. Kaori, how do you feel about Ice? And don't lie because I still remember walking in on you using his cloak as a blanket that morning. Sakura said. Well, Kaori tried to deny it but knew it was futile. I really like him, but I'm sure he has feeling about his old friend, I mean he did make a promise to help her. This only brought a blank look from Sakura before she said something that might as well be the equivalent of growing 3 arms and a second head. Then just make a harem. I mean he does look like the type to want one. This brought a bright red blush from Kaori, and before she could say anything else Sakura was one step ahead of her for once. And no, I don't see him like that, so don't worry. But still a harem? Plus I'm sure Issei would only want strong women. This was only met with a really bitch look from her friend. Sakura, you're the captain of the kendo club for a reason. I'm sure that he'll happily take you. You're plenty strong. Hell, I'll be damned if he rejects you, especially with how you two act. This brought a fair amount of confidence to Kaori, who nodded, but sadly this good moment between sisters was broken by Sakura, who just wanted to add another thing. Book of Judgment be damned. Also, when you two get together, please tell me whenever you two get freaky so that I won't walk into you getting ack. Sakura said, but Kaori only brought the book back down on her head and walked ahead, leaving her pink-haired friend with a steaming bump on her head. Back to the current time. Kaori knew her time was up, but even with knowing that she is going to die. She smiled knowing that she at least confessed her feelings to the boy that stole her heart. When she fell limp on Issei could only cry believing that he couldn't do anything. That was when Sona put a hand on his shoulder to get his attention. Issei, I think I could do something that could save her. This got Issei's attention because he wanted to save them desperately. What is it? Please tell me you're not lying. But Issei was met with a serious look from both Rias and Sona. We could revive them as devils, but please know that they will have to be a part of our peerage. Sona said, but they two heiresses were brought out their thoughts when they saw Issei bow to them quickly. Please save them, I don't want to lose anyone else. The scene brought a great amount of surprise from Sona because she never thought that a dragon like Issei would be willing to bow to them. Rias on the other hand put a hand on his shoulder and brought him up. Don't worry, we will save them, so please don't lower yourself, okay? Issei nodded while Sona smiled. She knew that while Rias may have been spoiled, it doesn't change the fact that she is still a gremmery. They were always known for their kindness. Sona went over to Kaori and brought out her pieces and put a pawn piece on her, so did Rias, but when they did the chant. It didn't work, so they proceeded to put more pieces. Sakura took 3 of Rias' pawns, and Kaori, much to everyone's surprise, took the rest of Sona's pawns with 2 of them mutating. In the end the two are now devils, although at this point Inaros appeared on Issei's shoulder and had said something that brought a huge amount of surprise to everyone. Especially Issei, who was holding the two close, vowing to protect them. Dia. It was at this point that a new gear appeared on Kaori's right shoulder. It was also a pauldron like Issei's, but unlike Issei's, whose shape is that of a scarab, it was in the shape of a samurai's shoulder guard, but unlike those, this one seemed to be made with a beautiful celestial blue steel, along with a deep navy blue gem in the middle. It was also at this moment that it began to speak. Inaros, is that really you? The gear began to speak, much to the surprise of everyone except the 2 gears. It is, my maid, I thought that I would never see you again. But why are you a sacred gear? This brought a slight chuckle from the now named Tia. Well, after hearing about what happened to you that fateful day. I sort of went berserk in the underworld, and well, after a lot of work and taking a couple leaders with me and scaring a lot more. I was defeated, and now here we are. This brought a deadpan stare from everyone, especially Inaros, who could only stare but then let out a hearty laugh. Why am I not surprised, but that's besides the point. Now that you are awake, what are you going to do now? This brought attention to the gear. First off, I'm going to change my host into a dragon so that I will require the help of her new master. Sona went up to her. I am her master, what is it that you require of me? Sona said, and while she is scared, she promised to help Issei. You lot still have that strange way of healing, right? You know, the one where you get naked and simply lay next to them? Sona nodded. Okay, then I just need to borrow some of your magic over the weekend, you boy. Yes, Issei knew when to show respect, especially since it's Inuro's mate. You better make sure that bitch and her cronies don't leave this place. After what they did to my host, her friend and the young child. You better make sure that they don't leave this place alive. At first Issei was confused, but then he adopted a serious look and gave a nod. Don't worry, I warned Rainer, and I'm pretty sure that whoever is with her has no business being here, so don't worry, I'll bury them. Issei said as he set the two girls down. As he stood up, Middle quickly run up to him. Middle, stay with the girls. I have business to attend to. Middle at first was scared, but a gentle hand from Kaneko was enough to calm her down. Kaneko, can I trust you to keep her safe? Kaneko nodded. Stay safe, Ice. Kaneko said as she lifted Middle. Ice nodded and looked at the two heiresses. Sorry about this, but could you keep them safe? Sona nodded as she lifted Kaori and Yuudo lifted Sakura. You know, Yuudo, I'm sure that if Sakura was awake she would probably pass out considering she is one of your fangirls. This got a laugh from Yuudo and the others as Issei went to where the old church is, leaving behind the two peerages. Saji, being somewhat reasonable, started to state his doubts. Hey, is that a good idea? I mean, sure, he was strong enough to scare us, but will he be able to handle a fallen and a bunch of cronies? This made Middle puff her cheeks out in frustration. Before she hopped out of Kaneko's arms and went up to Saji and gave him a kick in the shin. Ah, hey, ow. What did you do that for, kid? But he was met with a pout from Middle. Big brother can handle them. I know because I saw him train with Mr. Azazel before. And he also beat Volley, and Volley is super strong. Middle innocently said, but one name alone was enough to fill them with dread except Saji. Wait, did you say Azazel? Rias asked. Middle, who nodded. Are you sure you're not lying? But this made Middle puff her cheeks. I'm not. I mean, if I did and Kali finds out, then she pinches my cheeks. Middle said. Now the two heiresses have a potential problem on their hands and it involves their new friend, but they knew that he doesn't have a hidden agenda against them. So they'll at least give him the benefit of the doubt. But they had to at least ask. Middle, if you don't mind me asking, how does Issei know Azazel? Middle tilted her head in a cute way, but nevertheless complied. Big brother used to live at the Grigori when he was small, but then he left when he was around 13 and after a couple years he came back, but he was very sad and before we knew it, poof. Gone. He left again. This at first rang warning bells, but then another question popped up. What happened in Issei's life? Well, other than that, let's hurry up and get going. Middle, you can stay with Kaneko if you want. Rias said as Kaneko picked up the small girl and Middle bobbed her head in confirmation. But another thought went through her head in the meantime. Stay safe, Issei. Meanwhile with Issei. Well. If it ain't a shitty devil worshipper. A white-haired man said with a sneer. Issei on the other hand was not impressed, and even if he was, it would probably be because this guy may be better than the other exorcists that he senses in the abandoned church. Although another thought popped up in his head. Well. If it ain't a stupid priest. How many kids did you fuck today, or are you too busy taking it up the ass to try? Issei said, and to his credit it seems the priest quickly took offense to that. Well, it seems like it's my lucky day. If I couldn't redeem the shitty holy maiden or those two shitty angels, then I will just have to redeem you. The names, but before he could say anything else he jumped out of the way as a large wrench came out of nowhere and slammed itself into the ground. Hey. Isn't it rude to interrupt? Shut up. I couldn't care less about the name of some B-grade villain. I'm here because I got a score to settle and to get rid of a bunch of exorcists, and I still see a bunch of them. Issei yelled out as he charged at the other exorcists inside the church, and before they could do anything else, a sandstorm appeared inside the church and quickly made work of the grunts quickly, effectively ripping apart every last one of them, except for one who was able to move out of the way. After the sandstorm passed, the lone priest was terrified to see nothing but sand surrounding him and Issei standing in front of him shaking his head quickly. Crap, I think I got sand in my clothes again. Issei said as the one lucky priest who moved out of the way witnessed the carnage. He knew he had to get out of here and fast. So he did what any sensible coward always does. And threw a flashbang at Issei which banged in front of him, giving him more than enough time to run away. Crap. Well, you know how those villains are. Those who live to run away, live to run another day. Issei couldn't help but facepalm at Inuro's words, but he was quickly brought out of his thoughts when he heard a scream coming from downstairs. He had to hurry. Rainer was currently in front of a cross, and on the cross was a girl who seems to be around Kaneko's age, and she was screaming in pain from what the cross was doing to her. Finally, when this is done, I won't be considered a failure. Maybe then Azazel could love me. I mean, twilight healing is a really rare sacred gear. Rainer thought to herself as the girl was still screaming, and to the side of the cross was a blue-haired fallen who was covered in cuts and bruises, but luckily she was still conscious. Stop, Rainer, it's not too late, but she was only met with a kick to the gut and for Rainer to step on her face. Shut up, Calawerner. This is all your fault. If you hadn't killed Donna Seek and sent that half-breed to wherever you sent her, then I wouldn't have had to attack those two. Well, at least I know that the devils won't gain any new users. Rainer began to giggle softly before going into a full-blown madwoman kind of laughter while walking away from Calawerner. And with the twilight healing I'll be invincible. Maybe then I'll finally gain Azazel's attention. I won't have to worry about finding a purpose anymore. And it's all thanks to the Holy Maiden. Rainer turned to where the Holy Maiden should be and is only met with broken chains and an empty sacred gear extractor. Rainer became furious and turned towards Calawerner. Only to be met with nothing but air. She couldn't believe what just happened. She was so close to finally achieving her goals and finally be able to impress Azazel, but now she couldn't do anything. She is not mad. She is beyond furious. Sadly for her, that anger became cold dread when she felt something clamp itself tightly on one of her wings. She turned her head slowly, praying to whoever bothered to listen that it wasn't who she thought it was. Sadly for her, her prayers were ignored as her violet eyes were met with golden eyes. But instead of the usual amount of kindness that is in them, they held nothing but cold fury. I fancy meeting you here. She was only met with a fist to the face, and before she met the ground she was pulled back up by her wing. Yes, fancy meeting you here. Didn't I tell you to keep your nose clean? Issei said as he threw Rainer to the extractor. She hit the extractor with a great impact and Issei was simply walking towards her. I was just doing my job. Please, Ice, surely you can understand. The only response she got was another fist to face. The force of the impact was more than enough to knock her out. I do understand. I'm also doing my job. Issei said as he grabbed the chains and tied them to Rainer. Man, I hate this job, but someone's gotta do it. Issei said as he began to leave the church. Along the way he helped Kali up since she was being held up by the girl, who seemed to be stronger than she looks, considering that she was chained to the extractor. Let's get out of here. As the two walked to the outside, Issei learned Asia's name and learned of the circumstances of what has happened and what brought her here to Kuo. Once they made it outside of the church, Issei looked at the church before he said something that sent a chill down Asia's spine. I promised you, Rainer, that I will bury you if you do anything stupid. And what do you up and go do? Something stupid, Issei said as a great amount of sand began to gather around the church that was beginning to fall apart. At least the demolish companies won't spend as much money. Issei joked as the sand began to gather around in greater volume. This continued until the church was completely swallowed by the sand. Meanwhile, in the basement, Rainer was beginning to wake up and noticed that there wasn't anyone and that it was even darker than what she expected. Hello? She was met with silence until she heard it. She looked up and saw all the sand. She knew that she couldn't do anything else and just gave up. Meanwhile, Issei brought his hands together and the sand pile collapsed in on itself, not only ending Rainer, but the tainted aura that the church had, leaving nothing but a patch of land that is nothing but tightly packed sandstone. And that's that. Man, I'm drained. Hey, let's get going, we still need to get middled. But he saw that the two girls were already asleep, clearly exhausted from everything that has happened. Issei scratched the back of his head as he picked the two of them up and walked back home. Well, he would have preferred if Kaori and Sakura didn't get involved. He knew that they are now part of the supernatural. Not only that he had to deal with the fact that he did pretty much destroy something that he shouldn't have destroyed, and he is probably going to have to explain himself later, but that is later, and right now he had to worry about taking the two girls home. I'll deal with the consequences later. Issei said as he walked into the night. Meanwhile, Kaneko was staring at a sleeping Middle who had a peaceful expression on her face. Kaneko, on the other hand, had a big question on her mind. How did he know about Senjutsu? She would have to ask him when they meet next time. When Kaori woke up, the first she noticed was that she was naked, not only that she was held close by Issei, who was at the side of her bed, and Sona Shitori is right next to her, naked as the day she was born, but before she could freak out, a voice in her head spoke, a voice that belonged to someone she met in her dreams. I see that you finally woke up, young one. The voice quickly surprised Kaori, but she stayed in place because the last thing she needs is for a huge misunderstanding to sprout from her, landing on top of either person beside her. Do not worry, young one. Issei is only holding you close because he was scared of losing you and because it sped up the transformation. This calmed Kaori down, but another question popped up. Transformation? What do you mean? At first she was confused, but then she remembered the events that occurred last night, and before she knew it she flew out of bed, knocking Ice down in the process. Crap, what happened to Middled? Is that bitch still out there? Surprisingly, he was still asleep. Sona on the other hand woke up with a start since she did not expect Kaori to suddenly get up after everything that has happened. Kaori, what was wrong? Kaori turned toward Sona and the first question that popped up. First, what happened to Middled? Secondly, how did you get in my house? Thirdly, why is Ice here? Not that I mind. Finally, how am I alive? Kaori asked in a rapid-fire fashion, along with radiating an unknown power that would have scared anyone, but thankfully Sona was able to keep a calm head as she begins to answer Kaori's questions. To answer them with the important one being last. I teleported in here along with you. Don't worry, I managed to convince your parents. Even though she used magic, but she can't say that now. Ice is here because Tiamat told me to call him here so that he can help with the transformation. He came quickly because I'm sure that he still blames himself for not being able to protect you. The reason you're still alive is because at the time of your death, I was able to revive you, while Rias revived Sakura as devils. I'll explain that later when we meet at the Orc later. Finally, Middlet is with Kalawinner at Ice's home. Even though they were supposed to leave, she really wanted to make sure that you're okay. This helped calm Kaori down considering everything that has happened, but now another problem has shown up. Wait, does that mean that I saw everything? Kaori asked with dread apparent in her voice. But before she could reach for the shinai, Sona was able to calm her down. Don't worry. Issei was a complete gentleman when he helped with the transformation process. I'm pretty sure that he was only holding you because he was afraid. Afraid? Why would he be afraid? I mean, he's a dragon. This surprised Sona since she didn't expect Kaori to know anything about the supernatural. Let alone the fact that Issei is a dragon. Now she wonders what else does she know. How did you know about that? I would have thought that you wouldn't know anything about the supernatural, considering that you were a human. Kaori at first was confused, but then it clicked, she pulled an Issei. I wasn't supposed to know, was I? Sona couldn't hide her surprise at how Kaori was able to stay calm in the situation, since an average human. Scratch that she's now a dragon devil, nevertheless she shouldn't have known anything about the supernatural. Sona thought about what could have led to Kaori knowing about the supernatural, but before she could begin to brainstorm. The culprit began to stir, and in all honesty he wasn't looking too good considering all the worrying he's done. Morning already? Issei asked as he got and rubbed the back of his head. Nursing a throbbing pain that he remembered shouldn't be there. Did something hit me while I was asleep? Issei couldn't hide his blush from seeing Kaori in the nude, even though he was able to stay calm at first, mostly due to the fear of Inuro's mate getting angry at him. He quickly got up and left the room quickly because he didn't want to meet her shinai again. He was sure that this time he would most certainly die if he got hit with that. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to peep. Kaori heard from the other side of the door, but then she looked down and remembered that she was still naked. While she wanted to be mad at first, she let it go, considering that Issei did help with the transformation process. Kaori went to her closet and quickly picked out some casual clothes along with Issei's cloak, although in all honesty it is more of a coat, one that she secretly enjoyed wearing every now and then. She turned toward Sona, who while Issei ran and Kaori was busy being embarrassed dressed herself in the school uniform. Alright Ice, we're decent, you can come back in now. Kaori yelled out to Issei, who was currently waiting outside of her room. As he came in, the first thing he noticed was Kaori wearing his cloak, and then Sona, who he didn't notice, but he knew better than to say anything. Hey Issei, if you don't mind me asking, what happened after Sona revived me and Sakura? Issei took a seat while the girls took a seat at the edge of Kaori's bed. While it is nice that he has their attention, he would have been happier if it wasn't because they were asking about his latest kills. Something that Issei never truly enjoyed was killing or hurting anyone in general. He would much rather just enjoy life with a smile, but he also knew that it is naive to think that just being nice will help. He understood that quite well after learning the hard way. Well, to put it simply, after confirming that you two were okay. I went to the church where Rainer and her cronies are, and well, I made sure that they learned their lesson permanently. I also made sure to clean up, so there's that. At this point Sona couldn't help but wonder about what he meant by clean up, so asked a question that she is quite sure that she is not going to like the answer to. Issei, please tell me that you didn't destroy the church. Sona began to sound a little scared, but when she saw Issei looking away whistling a little tune to himself, that was more than enough to answer her question. So like any calm, collected, well-respected leader and representative of the youth devils, she calmly reprimanded Issei for doing something that could be seen as a sort of reason to start a war. Which is a complete lie because she launched herself at Issei, put her hands on his shoulders and shook him quite violently. Issei, you idiot. Do you understand what you have done? I don't see the problem. It wouldn't be the first. This brought an even more violent reaction from Sona because now she had someone who has destroyed church property before. Issei, what you did could be taken as an act of war. At first Issei was confused, but then it clicked and he knew he fucked up. At the time it was justifiable, or at least in his eyes, but now that he thought about it, it would probably explain why he couldn't get close to certain areas in Italy without getting attacked on sight. That would also explain why Adriano began laughing about a stupid name that he has heard about when he went to those certain areas to get some stuff for the village. All in all, Issei began to have a feeling that this may bite him in the ass later down the line. Oh, don't worry, I'm sure that this time it could be justifiable. I mean, the fallen were there and I'm pretty sure that they may have desecrated the place. So I'm sure if any church agents show up they will see that it was completely justifiable. Issei tried calming Sona, but then Kaori became curious. Ice, what did you do to the church? Issei knew he couldn't lie to her, or more like he couldn't bring himself to lie to her. The Shinai also helped as well. Oh, I pretty much gathered a huge amount of sand and used it to completely crush the church. Fuck. This brought a smile from Kaori, because at least Issei was still Issei. Sona on the other hand. Issei, first off, why did you? Sadly, before she finished her question she saw Issei jumping out of the window and running away. Kaori couldn't help but laugh because Sona was thrown for a loop and Issei was probably halfway towards home. Come on, let's go. If what you said is correct, then Ice should be heading back home to check on Middled. I'll explain to you everything I know while on the way. Kaori said as she opened the door for Sona to leave. Also, I should also probably ask Ice about how he feels about me. She whispered to herself. Alright, I should be safe now. Ice looked behind him hoping that he lost Sona, because in all honesty, he did not expect that kind of strength from someone who looked so small. Well, now that he thought about the first person to have great strength and a small frame would be Ice. Kaneko said as another blonde-haired blur tackled him from behind. Big brother. Middle yelled out as she settled herself on Issei's back. Issei, on the hand, had a meeting with the ground. Big brother. Why are you kissing the ground? Middle couldn't hide her confusion at why her big brother was kissing the ground, but then she saw a hand grab him by the neck and pick him, coincidentally dropping Middle on her butt. She looked up and saw Kaneko helping Issei up. Middle was no longer dressed as a gothic and instead was wearing a blue dress that used to belong to Kaneko before. All in all, Issei would definitely call her adorable. Big brother. We can't find Kali or Asia. Middle said, and when Issei let out a laugh and Kaneko had a smile on her face. That was until they heard some hard panting behind them and saw a blue-haired woman who is currently wearing a suit and a blonde-haired nun. Issei couldn't help but smile at his sister in all but blood and the person he rescued from the fallen in front of him. Middle, on the other hand, charged at Kali and simply hugged her. Kali couldn't help but return the hug. Asia couldn't help but giggle at the sight of two sisters simply feeling safe with the other. Hey sis, I take it that Middle outran you again. Issei couldn't help but laugh at her reaction, but Middle was able to rub salt in the wound by simply being Middle. No, Kali is just. Issei knew what she was going to say, and so did Kali, and before they knew it, Kali lifted her quickly and began to pinch her cheeks. Issei and Kaneko, on the other hand, couldn't help but laugh at the reaction. This was pretty much the scene the two heiresses along with their respective peerages are seeing, with Issei and Kaneko leaning on each trying not fall over from laughing so much, while Kali held Middle in the air pinching her cheeks, Middle crying about the pinching. But also laughing because of Kali's reaction and Asia trying to diffuse the tension only for Kali to turn her attention to her, and Asia is now the one getting her cheeks pinched. Middle couldn't help but laugh, or at least until Kali turned to her again. Rias couldn't help but laugh at the scene, while Sona still had a stoic look on her face. Well, as stoic as she could muster, because the scene was quite amusing. Kaori and Sakura, on the other hand, went up to the group, and when Middle saw them, she went from a giggling mess to a sobbing mess as she launched herself at Sakura and Kaori. Kaori caught Middle while Sakura was next to her, patting her back trying to help her calm down, but from the looks of it, Kaori was able to soothe Middle, so Sakura simply stood next to her. There. It's not your fault, little one, so please don't worry. We don't hate you, we were actually worried for you. Are you okay, little one? Kaori said, and thankfully Middle nodded in her shoulder. That's good. Don't worry, Middle, I'm sure that your big brother made the bad people go away. So don't worry. Kaori motioned for Issei to come and help with Middle. Something that he did immediately, because when one were to think about it, Middle must still be blaming herself for what happened to Kaori and Sakura. When he arrived, Kaori handed Middle to Issei and he began to pat her back to help with soothing her. Middle tried to stop her crying, but Issei only told her to let it out. And so she did, while Kaori was there also holding Middle. The scene itself is in a way heartwarming. Two adults soothing a child, it looked like they were a couple, and Middle is their child. While she was crying, the two just held her close to them just so she would feel safe. After a little bit of time passed while Middle let all her worries out, she went to sleep in Issei's arms. The two new dragons looked at each other and nodded, an unspoken message sent to each other. But then they heard a cough from a certain pink-haired devil. When the two turned towards the others, they were met with smiles from everyone, but one smile immediately filled them with dread. It was the smug smile of Sakura, who pretty much might as well say fucking finally. Let's head back to my place and we can talk more about the situation there and so we can take this little munchkin to bed. Issei said while he and Kaori began to walk to his house along with the peerages of both Rias and Sona. They thought that since they were both going to Issei's house, they might as well take the chance to introduce everyone to the new members. While on their way back, Rias and Sakura couldn't help but notice that the two dragons were holding hands. Quite an endearing sight considering the words one of them said to the other a couple days ago. While the two devils began to talk about what this could mean. The two dragons began to whisper to each other, talking about what was said the other day. So Isay was wondering about the other day Kaori didn't have to speak because she felt Issei hold her hand in a firm yet strong grip. I also feel the same way Kaori, but you know about my friend and Issei tried to ease her to a rejection because he didn't want to be sleazy and Kaori is someone that deserves to be happy after everything that has happened, but Kaori was quick to say something that almost made Issei drop middled. Don't worry, we can just make a harem. Issei couldn't believe what he was hearing and this is coming from Kaori of all people. But nevertheless he might as well follow up. Are you sure? I mean, wouldn't you be against it? At first I was, but then when I thought about it, it's you of all people that I'll be with. You have a wonderful heart. You're always willing to help others and you become friends with everyone you meet. To be honest, I wouldn't think of anyone else to be with. That and you being great with kids and easy on the eyes are a bonus. Kaori said with a wink. This brought a blush from and a look of surprise from Issei. First off, Issei is happy that he didn't have to worry about hurting Kaori, but the thing that surprised Issei was that. Did you just make a joke? Issei couldn't believe, but then she goes and kisses him on the cheek. It was one surprise after the other for Issei, but he sighed and simply held her a little closer. I take it that you closing the distance is you saying yes? Kaori said as she brought her head to his shoulder. Yep, I guess I'll be in your care now, huh? Kaori couldn't help but chuckle at his words. Yep. Let's get along, honey. Issei couldn't but let out a happy hum from hearing that. Yeah, let's get along, dear. At that point the group finally arrived back home and when they entered they didn't expect such a nice place for someone who lived alone. Issei turned to the group and smiled his usual cheesy smile. Well, everyone, come on in and make yourself at home. As the saying goes, mi casa es su casa. I'm gonna go take Middle to bed and I'll join you lot in a bit. Issei said as he went upstairs to tuck Middle in. While he was doing that, Kaneko went over to the couches and began to turn the TV on while the others began to make themselves at home. Yudo was actually the first one to notice the bookshelves that were filled with all kinds of books from different techniques to mostly cookbooks. Wow, I didn't think that he would have this many books. Kali couldn't hide her amusement at the knight's observation. Well, it shouldn't be that surprising considering who practically raised him. This brought the attention of everybody in the room. Can you tell us about his past, Kalawerner? Rias asked, but Kali only shook her head. His past is not for me to discuss, but I can tell you that he was raised by one of the cadres. So I guess you can tell that he is not one to be taken lightly. But don't worry, Ice is originally from Kuo and he is in all sense of the word a neutral party. This brought a sense of relief from everyone. At this point they began to have a normal conversation from what Kali does for a living to Sakura talking about Ria's disposition to sleep naked. It was at this point that Akeno said something that turned everyone's eyes to the newest dragon. Although another reason she did that is because she saw Issei and he put a finger to his mouth so he could have a chance to surprise her. So Kaori, if you don't mind me calling you Kaori. Are you and Ice an item? This brought a spit take from Kaori as she spat out what she was drinking and Issei to almost fall forward on his face. Although poor Saji, who was trying to flirt with Sona, was hit with the full brunt of the spit take. Kaneko helped Kaori by patting her back to help, but Kaori couldn't help but be embarrassed at what Akeno said. Nevertheless, she composed herself and answered honestly. Yep, he and I are dating, although I did tell him that I am okay with a harem. Although I probably should have told him that as long as me and the others get along. At this point Issei was right behind her and hugged her from behind, putting his head on top her head. This brought a surprise eep from Kaori, but the reaction from the others just said that they knew he was there. Kaori, while she may have at first tried to jump out of his arms, this time she just settled down and let him hug her. I take it that Middle is in bed now? Issei nodded at this. Good. I just hope that she doesn't have any nightmares. Yeah. To be honest, I was a little hesitant to take her to bed, Issei said, and Kaori couldn't help but agree. Yeah. To be honest, she really can be baby at times, but maybe this time we could have held her a little longer, you know, just to be sure that she's okay. Kaori wouldn't admit it, but she really did enjoy the feeling that came with comforting Middle. She didn't understand why, but she enjoyed the feeling of protecting Middle. Thankfully Tia is there to help explain. Well, I could be slightly at fault for that considering who you are with and who my maid is. This surprised Kaori because when she first met her, she just started by going on a rant about Altera and Devona acting like children and that the next time she sees them, then they are going to get quite the earful. At that point Kaori woke up. I guess I never got the chance to explain. At this point everyone looked at Kaori with a surprised look, but the one who was surprised the most was Inrose himself. Tia, did you not tell Kaori about being a dragon? This was met with a laugh from inside the sacred gear. Well no, I mean I did try when she was asleep. But when we first met didn't you go on a whole rant about how Altera and Devona ruined your chances but Kaori was interrupted by Tia. Okay I know that I was being a little petty, but would anyone blame me? Yes. Shut up Inrose. It's been a couple thousand years now. They denied me the chance to have children. We have Issei and Kaori. I mean yes they are dating now, but you get what I mean. This brought a blush from Kaori and Issei and a good laugh from everyone. After a while of grumbling, even Tia couldn't help but concede. I guess you're right, but that doesn't change the fact that when I see those two again, they are going to get quite the earful. At this point Inrose wanted to ask a question that was haunting him for a while. By the way Tia. Yes Inrose. Why did they start fighting? This brought an awkward silence, but it was only met with an annoyed sigh. I don't think you're gonna like it, but it's because of stupid pride. They let their pride blind them, and in the end it costed you everything. At this point Rias had to ask because from what she learned from Sona is that those two never did get along. What do you mean if you don't mind me asking? Don't worry about it, but the reason why it costed me everything is because of one of my abilities that transferred the damage they take to me. I was able to take it since I have quite the high amount of life force compared to those two. Unfortunately it didn't change the fact that even I have my limits. In the end they saw my weakened body then the three factions and well the rest is history. At this point Sona was the one who spoke up. Yes the two heavenly dragons, Drake, the red dragon of domination and Albion, the vanishing dragon of supremacy but once again the two dragons interrupted Sona and by interrupt, they bursted out laughing. At first Sona was confused but then she became a little frustrated since she was interrupted. After a bit of time passed the two dragons were starting to calm down. Although it was actually Inrose who calmed down, while Tia was still a giggling mess. I'm sorry young one. It's just that why would Altera and Devona call themselves such ridiculous names? I mean, come now. The red dragon of domination and the vanishing dragon of supremacy. Oh goodness I most certainly wouldn't call those two those names. What do you mean? Sona asked and at that point Tia was able to calm down. It's just that, those two aren't as noble as you would expect. Then again in all honesty I think Inrose was the only one that had some kind of sanity. Remember that one time I was in the ground? I stand corrected. What about you Tia? Kaori asked in hopes that she may be normal. How about we change the subject to something that won't shatter Kaori's mind? At that point Kaori's face went pale at learning that the dragon in her gear might be insane. If it makes you feel better, at least she is not the boob dragon or the butt dragon, aka the red dragon and vanishing dragon. Kaori did feel a little better, but she was still a little scared of what sort of quirk Tia has. At this point Rias coughed into her hand getting everyone's attention. Yes of course thank you Inrose. Well then, first things first, Ice thank you for having us and thank you for taking care of the fallen at the church. No prob, the bitch had it coming after the whole fiasco she caused, but I do need to say this at least. One of them was somehow able to escape, so I recommend staying vigilant for a couple weeks. Not only that I think the church may end up sending some agents to Kuo sooner or later because I may or may not have. He destroyed the church that the fallen were using. That and if I remember correctly the church isn't as nice as the fallen Issei said, but at that point Rias jumped at him and began to shake him violently. Issei. Do you not understand what you have done? Issei on the other hand was incredibly dizzy and looked really pale. Nevertheless he answered as honestly as he could. Got rid of fallen and stray exorcists, oh are you talking about the church thing? Everyone couldn't help but just stare at Issei like was an idiot. Don't worry it's at the request from the Grigori, so I'm pretty sure that Uncle Azazel is explaining everything to the leaders of heaven. Then again I wonder how he is. Issei couldn't help but wonder about him, but it was cut short once Rias began to shake him again. Along with everyone having a good laugh at the comedic scene the two displayed. Meanwhile with Azazel. Oh come on Michael. I'm sure Ice didn't mean anything about it and didn't you give permission for the other one? Azazel said as he threw his arm around Michael a cup filled with whatever drink he has this time. I know that Issei doesn't mean it, but it doesn't change the fact that the church is going to send some people to Kuo because this isn't the first time that Issei crushed a church. Oh come now. Those asshats completely deserved for what they were doing to that village. Azazel at this point couldn't hide his displeasure at what the people at that one particular church did. Yes but the point still stands that we must send someone to it make sure that he isn't a threat to the peace that we are maintaining. But another voice made itself known. You mean the peace that we are struggling to maintain, you mean? Because you do know that with what some devils are doing and what Rainer has done. We should have gone to war a long time ago. What my son did is practically irrelevant compared to what others have done. This voice belonged to none other than the angel of the stars, Kakabiel. Kakabiel, what are you getting at? Azazel asked because he knows that Kakabiel is someone that has been trying to get the factions to make a proper peace treaty. He was one of the very few leaders to try. What I'm trying to say is that maybe it is time for us to make a proper treaty. The longer we delay this, the closer the chances for other factions to attack us. Michael sighed at Kakabiel's words, even though he means well, it doesn't change the fact that doing that may not end well for anyone. Kakabiel, while I may agree that it is best to make a treaty, we still do not know of what may happen if we reveal the truth of what happened to God. It may end up being the end of heaven as we speak. Michael told Kakabiel once again. And the fact that many innocents were lost because of this Cold War of ours doesn't mark anything. I mean, you had to excommunicate many good people because of the glitch in the system. Not only that, there's also the fact the Holy Sword project was allowed to happen. Michael couldn't hide the look of regret on his face. Even he had to agree with Kakabiel on this. Why are you trying so hard for peace, Kakabiel? I mean, in the past you were trying everything in your power to start it again. That was until a couple decades ago when you suddenly changed your tune. But just when I thought everything was getting better, you end up going to devil territory for months at a time. So what gives, Kakabiel? Azazel asked with an exasperated tone of voice. He was at first annoyed by Kakabiel and his tries to start the war, but when he changed his tune of trying to make a proper treaty, he couldn't help but be a little happy. That was until he found out about this traveling to devil territory for months at a time. Heck, he was tempted to send Kakabiel to Cocytus because of that. Kakabiel on the other hand knew he was backed to a corner, so he knew that he had to reveal the truth. Azazel, please understand that I have a reason. Then what is it? There must be a reason, right? Kakabiel was going to try to retort, but he knew that if he did, then it's possible Issei could be at risk. It's actually because of Isay's mother. This got the attention of the two leaders. From what they learned about Issei is that he was a part of a tragedy that resulted in the loss of his family, not only that he was also in critical condition when he arrived. In a way, this began to bring some details that he never noticed. Especially when Kakabiel was with Isay. He saw the fatherly love that he never thought he would see from someone like him. Surely you must know of what Isay actually is, right? Kakabiel looked at Azazel and Michael, but they shook their heads. Well, he is actually half yokai. This brought a great amount of surprise from Azazel and a shocked look from Michael, the reason being quite obvious. How? I mean, I never even noticed anything that could hint to what he is. Heck, I thought he was always a human. Then explain how he was able to use Senjutsu so naturally, Kakabiel said. Not only that, did you not notice the many times that Kuroka tried to make him have kids with her? I thought it was because he was naturally talented. And you know how Kuroka is with trying to repopulate the Nekashu race again. I mean, there was the time when she blasted Volley with a ray gun and tried with her. That is true. Honestly, I hope Kuroka tries to ease up on the whole thing. Actually, now that I think about it, didn't she also make a comment about Issei and how he is hiding something? Kakabiel couldn't help but wonder how was he able to be a leader for so long. But then again, Azazel did keep everyone safe, along with making some artificial sacred gears that was once believed to be impossible, except for that ray gun. That is something that everyone agreed was the worst thing that he has made. I'm guessing that you have an idea on what he is then? Kakabiel asked. Yes, it's starting to make sense, but why did you go to devil territory? Like I said, it's because of Isay's mother. She is someone that I fell in love with and her with me. Then why was she with her husband at the time? At this point, Kakabiel looked at him with a small glare. It's because she was forced into the marriage. Her family was held hostage and in the end, she ended up having that man's child after many other failures. What he didn't know was that she was a yokai. Who would have thought that he would have such a violent reaction to the discovery? Thankfully at that point I was able to get her family out of their situation. Not only that, I was able to free her from that marriage, taking her family to Kyoto, and the reason I disappeared for months at a time was because you were helping in raising the child, that child being Isay. Yes, but once her former husband found out about it, he reacted violently. To the point that he forced one of Isay's friends to lose control of her sacred gear. Wait, but how did he find them? Surely you must have done everything in your power to ensure her safety. Yes, but sadly there are those that wanted the war to start again. They somehow found her information, along with information on potential sacred gears, and sent it to her former husband. Kakabiel remembered how those fallen tried to goad him into starting a war. I remember how they told me that some devils did it, but I knew the owners of the territory at the time and that they were okay with me being there as long as I don't hurt anyone. Heck, there were times when they babysat little Isay while Miyabi and I went off on a date. It is sad that they died so long ago, nevertheless once the fallen came to get me. Well, let's just say that when I saw the look they gave Ice, I just let loose. Kakabiel couldn't hide the cynical laugh he let out, but he gathered himself so as to not scare them. At the time, I sealed Ice's memories along with placing a seal on him to hide what he is. But why? I mean, surely Ice would have wanted to know about his past. Azazel asked Kakabiel. Think about it, Azazel. His mother is someone who was forced into a loveless marriage to a man who only saw her as a conquest. And he is the child of the two. I'm sure Issei would end up hating himself if he finds out. But what if he ends up learning about his origins? Michael raised a good point to Kakabiel, one that he knew he had to attend to soon. Because from what he heard from Penemu, Issei is starting to question his past. I will just have to be there to help him. And what if you can't? Kakabiel was confused at first, but then he thought about it. I believe in Ice, and I think I may have something that could help. Kakabiel said. And what is it? If you don't mind me asking. Michael asked. Don't worry, Michael. Oh, by the way, how is Irina? She is progressing very well, sadly she isn't ready to be a brave saint yet. How do you mean? I think she is still holding herself accountable for what happened to Issei. I even tried to tell her that he is alive, but she wouldn't believe it. Kakabiel couldn't help but feel a little sad after hearing that, since he did consider Irina like the daughter he never could have. Do you think that is possible to send her to Kuo? I mean, you did say that they may end up sending some agents to Kuo to determine the threat Ice poses. Which, if I may add, is very small. And less provoked. Michael understood what he was trying to do, and honestly he believes that it may do her some good. I will see what I can do, but I will not promise anything. That is all I ask. I will also try to send something to Ice's godmother so that she can expect to see him soon. Kakabiel left the room, leaving the two leaders to continue discussing what they were discussing about, but one thing began to go through Kakabiel's head as he took a locket out of his coat. When he opened it, it was a family photo of him with Miyabi and Issei on his shoulders. Standing alongside them is the Shidu family, with Mrs. Shidu having an arm draped around Miyabi's shoulder, and Mr. Shidu had Irina on his shoulders. I would be more than happy to see everyone again. Sadly, for peace to finally come, some sacrifices have to be made, Kakabiel said to no one in particular as he made his way back to the Grigori. End of the part 2. So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.